What's going on, everyone? Alex de Silva. I hope you are well and you're having an amazing day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. My guest today is Dan Brulé, the world's expert and renowned pioneer in the field of breathwork. Some refer to Dan as the Bruce Lee of breathwork, which I personally love. He is the breathwork coach for Tony Robbins, leader of the worldwide spiritual breathwork movement, author of Just Breathe, and founder of Breath Mastery, where he has helped thousands of people globally. I'm a huge fan of Dan Brulé, so for me, this is an absolute honor. How are you doing, Dan? Welcome to the show.
It's doing great. Thank you. Thank you, Alice. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Good stuff. So look, I always ask the question because it's a big open question and also gives the audience an opportunity to get to know you in your own words. So who is Dan Brulé?
Well, I guess I'm a missionary for the breath. I'm an avid student and teacher of breath work and just sort of revealing and unraveling and discovering the power and the potential. It's like right under our nose. And starting from way back as an X-ray technician, when I resuscitated somebody for the first time, I blew into them and they blinked and woke up. And what a miracle to give somebody your breath and they come back to life. And I've had near drowning experiences. I was a deep sea diver in the military. I did underwater rescue. I spent a lot of time in India and China tracking down the roots and the sources of various breathing practices, pranayama, qigong, and those sort of things. So, breathing, turning people on to the spirit of breath, to the power of breath. It's my mission. It's my purpose in life. And I feel really fortunate because some people haven't really figured out where they came from, why they're here, what their purpose is. And so I'm basically living my dream, doing what I love, and sometimes causing a lot of trouble along the way. But they say if you're not pissing anybody off, you probably aren't making a difference in the world. So based on how many people I've pissed off in my life, I must be making a pretty big difference.
I'm with you on that, to be fair. So I like pissing people off in the right way, for sure, for sure. What was it about, your experience? You talked about bringing someone to life. I've had that experience twice in my life myself, not kind of through training, but I was on holiday, once in Thailand, once in Turkey, and was in a situation where two terrible incidents had happened. And one, I was able to help two people to kind of survive. They were in a knife fight, and managed to kind of help them, keep them calm, and eventually, they got kind of taken away, and both of them, thank God, survived. The second one, unfortunately, which was in Thailand, unfortunately, the gentleman didn't survive. But it was an experience for me that I didn't realize later on, years later, how important the breath is, and how we really take it for granted. I spent my life in addiction and suffering from mental illness, and just never really understood the sort of the power of that. What was it for you that got you into breath work? Was it that incident when you sort of brought somebody to life, or was it a lot earlier than that?
Yeah, it was much earlier. I was in kindergarten or first grade in Catholic school. And every Friday, the priest would make the rounds of all the classes. And I can remember on that particular day, he was talking about the first book in the Bible, Genesis, and how God took dust of the earth, formed the body of man, and breathed into the nostrils of man the breath of life, and man became a living soul. I don't know. I was 5 years old, but that was just the most amazing, exciting thing I had ever heard. And I must have gotten too animated. I don't have too many clear memories, but I can remember the nun tapping me on my head and the priest with his hands on my shoulders, trying to get me to sit down in my chair. So it ignited something in me. and it never really went away. And then I had a couple of near drowning experiences as a child, and another one as a teenager, and then my last one was in the military, and I had to literally be resuscitated myself.
Wow.
And you don't know what you got till it's gone, at that expression goes. And I can remember those moments of coming back and breathing, and the sound of the breath, and the breath being like bubbles of light rather than molecules of oxygen. They were like bubbles of light, and they were, as I breathed, they kind of infused every cell in my body, and it was ecstatic. And so, whew, I just thought, God, everybody needs to feel this. Everybody needs to like experience this. And so, but not everybody's willing to volunteer for drowning. And so I thought there must be some way to unlock this power that's in the breath and turn people onto it. And so when I discovered rebirthing right out of coming out of the military in 76, I discovered Leonard Orr and the rebirthing technique. And as they say in New York, bada bing, bada boom. Suddenly I had a way. There was actually a method. There was a path you could practice and develop this ability to become available to something greater than us, to be open to having something powerful flow through us, and to access healing and creative energies. And so it really solidified my mission. And then I just basically, I said, well, here's one method called rebirthing. What else is out there? And I just made it my business to dig up and find any breathing teacher anywhere in the world. I've traveled to over 60 countries in search of masters and teaching along the way. And so and here I am still doing it, and it never gets old. And I keep discovering new things. And some of my students now, for after 20 or 30 years or less, have become stars in the breathing world. And so it's a nice place to be, where, you know, you don't have to wonder what to do. You don't have to wonder where to put your energy, what to think about. Something's always coming up that leads me, guides me, that inspires me or motivates me to go further.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you know, you talking about breath work and how you found that at a young age, and then you went on this journey of discovering it. But you talked about, you know, how it's literally under our nose, you know, and all of a sudden breath work over the last few years, you know, became, and I really hate the word, a trend. And I really despise when people turn things into trends, when actually these are practices that have been done for thousands of years, and all of a sudden they're trending. But also, more to the point, is something we do every day. You know, it's the first thing we do when we birth, and it's the last thing we do when we die, right? And it's such a powerful practice. And when I found breath work, I thought it was almost like my own medicine cabinet, so to speak. You know, someone allowed me to unlock this medicine cabinet that was within me my whole life. Did you find that when you sort of first experienced it, and then throughout your years and trying different practices, what has that kind of, you know, what has it done for you?
Yeah, well, I was a medical person in the military. I was a kind of in a special class of medical people, underwater deep sea diving, underwater rescue, special operations stuff. And so we discovered that by controlling our breath, we could control our arousal, we could focus, we could manage our emotions and manage our mental state, manage our chemistry and physiology, which are all the things that kind of do you in. I mean, all of the real battles and problems we have in life are internal. And so once I realized, holy cow, I was at the end of my rope. I didn't think I could take one more step. And I had some support in that moment with another guy came up along the side of me and saw that I was falling behind. And I was involved in what you might call self-degrading, a performance-degrading self-talk. I don't think I can make it. Oh my God, I'm going to die. I don't know. And just someone else's presence really was the first thing that I noticed helped me. Just somebody was there with me. That was a big deal. But then he said, hey, Doc, let's breathe. And so we started breathing in rhythm to our footsteps as we were running. And within I don't know how long, because time just sort of dissolved, but I had this amazing breakthrough. I suddenly had more energy than I'd ever had. And I ended up front. And so holy cow, the power of the breath, unlocking the energy that's available to us in the breath. And I was a medical person, and I was giving out drugs for headaches and for, pain. And in the meantime, I was playing with my own breath to deal with that stuff myself. And so I became my own sort of laboratory. And you're right, the brain is a pharmacy, and it can manufacture whatever chemicals are needed. And the breath helps us to activate those possibilities, those abilities that we have.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd like to get your take on current times, because
on what?
On current times.
Oh.
Yeah. So just to kind of get your take on current times, we're seeing more and more. I think there has always been, issues around mental health, addiction, suicide. But I've definitely noticed over the last couple of years, at least, where things have seemed to have just gotten worse and worse and worse. And then we start to then bring in, social labeling. We start to bring in gender confusion and everything else. And I found through my experience that I lost touch with myself. So I can't imagine, and I do see it in our practice where, clients are coming in younger and younger and younger, and they're completely losing touch with who they are. How important is the breath, on a day-to-day basis, just to I guess, to sort of help people to reconnect and I guess understand who they truly are without the labels.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right that breathwork has become a trend. In fact, globally, it's been the leading trend in wellness for the past few years, and it's only increasing. So, that's a sign that it's working, that it's making a difference. People are talking about it. People are developing skills, and the power and the potential of it is growing and being realized. And I think, it has been, especially the last couple of years, because of the pandemic. Anxiety has increased, stress has increased, interpersonal conflicts have increased, depression is through the roof, anxiety is through the roof, and there, the pandemic sort of irritated this trend of its own, an epidemic of stress and anxiety and depression in the world. Just made it worse. It exacerbated it. And the teenage suicides and early onset of issues that usually, you weren't seeing in kids, So something's getting worse. And we're coming to some kind of a big transformational point, because things can only get so bad before you really, like a drug addict, hits bottom, and then there's nowhere to go except up. And I think the world in general is heading towards some bottom like that, in conflict and wars and ignorance and prejudice and trauma and all of that stuff. We're coming to some, and I think it might even be an evolutionary point where a shift, an up leveling is going to occur, because the sheer weight of this down cycle
Mm.
And I think that's part of it. We need to remember that down cycles are as much a part of growth and healing as up cycles are.
Yeah.
And not to resist those down cycles, but to learn from them and surrender to them, and and allow these waves to really complete themselves. And so, the world isn't a mess, but on one level, it's a good sign, because
Mm.
it can only get so bad before it gets better. And so part of me is, let's let it get as bad as possible, as
Mm.
quick as possible, so we can get on to what's really trying to happen. It's like watching a plant grow. You put a seed in the ground, and at first, when it starts to sprout under there, you don't see what's happening, but something's happening, and a lot is happening, but there's no sign of it on the surface. And the first sign of it on the surface is actually a rising up of a pile of dirt. You don't even see the little sprout under it. You just see this growing mound of dirt popping up. But then finally, this little sprout comes out of that dirt, And so love has a way of pushing to the surface anything unlike itself. And for all of the evil and craziness and insanity going on in the world, there are many, many, many people who are ramping up their love and their compassion and their appreciation. And this is keeping a kind of balance as we spin off into whatever the next level of humanity is. And that's happening. And that's happening more than the other, I think. It just doesn't get the press. Negative reports make the front page of the newspaper, but little miracles you never even hear about. But when millions of little miracles are happening, something big is brewing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because love and light doesn't sell, does it? But fear and destruction unfortunately does. But as you said, it seems to be, we're seeing more and more of that love and light and connection with others. And one of the things I have found is, especially over the last couple of years, through the kind of the pandemic and now, it just seems that this chaos just seems to be, it was kind of brewing, as you said, or even just kind of coming out of the ground. All of a sudden, it just feels like this spot is about to just explode. And at first I thought, wow, this is quite scary. What could we do? And I wanted to kind of ask that question to you, because there is, there is an element where I think that love and that kindness, and when you truly learn to connect and understand the breath and you realize who you truly are, that kind of that, not just the God essence, but God itself, having an individual experience, it's tough to be able to see other people going through this, and you almost want to grab them and shake them. But at the same time, I think, as you said, you've just got to let it unfold, because otherwise we've ruined their experience. So what is the best that we can do? I mean, during these times where people are struggling, and for those, especially those listening, who may be struggling and they are looking for answers in how they can overcome stress, depression, anxiety, how they can start to take the right steps in bettering themselves.
Yeah. In answer to the rest of your question about every day and, what can we do about it? We need to learn how to navigate these waves of intensity. We need to learn how to navigate our own, emotions, that come up, and pain in ourselves that comes up, and how do we navigate that? Because if we don't have a way of navigating it, the only choice is to ignore and avoid and suppress, which just makes everything worse. It's a good short-term solution, but how do we manage it in our day-to-day life? And that's exactly where breath work comes in, because when a powerful emotion comes up in us, for example, the tendency is to contract our body and close our throat and hold our breath and become tense to try to resist this uncomfortable feeling that's emerging. in the same way we would try to protect ourselves from some external toxic force, where you brace yourself, you hold yourself tight, you hold your breath, and maybe you can resist this blunt trauma or whatever it happens to be. And so we got to find another way to navigate that, because that's not working, and that's responsible for a big portion of the suffering that we are experiencing as our own unconscious reaction to suppress and to avoid and to contract in the face of discomfort, or even in the face of joy. I mean, if people say, "Oh, I want to see God," I mean, if they met God on the street, they would short circuit. They would blow their mind. They couldn't handle it, So we have to do something to work on our own body mind system to prepare ourselves for a great awakening and to manage all of the ups and downs and the cycles on the way. So it starts with breath awareness, because breath awareness brings you into the present moment. It brings you into your body. It gets you out of your head. It grounds you in your body. Breathing is happening in the body. And so when you focus on the breath, you are coming back into your body. And leaving our body, disassociating, is an early strategy, a coping strategy that we learn. And some people never up-level that strategy. They never invent a new strategy. Their strategy throughout their life is to avoid and ignore and suppress and self-medicate and distract themselves with food and sex and work and whatever. And those things might work in the short term if you don't have any better skills. That's all you got to work with. So the answer is learn new skills. The answer is, first of all, notice it, come back into your body, get back in touch with yourself and who you are. And because that was one of the early strategies we used. If I'm a little baby laying in my belly in my crib and I can't even turn over by myself, I want to turn over, but I don't know how, and I can't. So what are my options? I go unconscious. That's how I escape these uncomfortable feelings. I have a good friend, Barnett Bain, Hollywood producer. He's got a great book called The Book of Doing and Being, and he's produced quite a few movies, a lot of documentaries, and Hollywood guy. And he has this really beautiful understanding. He says, if you take a puppy away from its mother or a kitten away from its mother, you're going to hear from both of them because you have severed an energetic bond. And it produces overwhelming feelings of aliveness. Now, they are distressing feelings of aliveness, but they are feelings of aliveness nonetheless. And so what happens to us as little babies when that energetic bond is severed and we are filled with these overwhelming, horrible feelings? You can't escape them. What do you do with them? You contract, you suppress, you go unconscious, you abandon ship, you leave your body because that's where all the feelings are taking place. And then when you're 3 or 4 years old and the cognitive centers come online, you add storytelling to that. So then as an adult, when we leave our body, we shuttle up into our head and we start thinking instead of feeling. And since Barnett teaches workshops in creativity, he understands that creativity is not born in the head. It's born in the heart. It's an emotional thing. It's born in the body. And once that impulse, hits the body and you have that inspiration, then you can move up into your head and work out the logistics and the technicalities and so on. But it doesn't originate in the head. So the only way to reconnect with your creativity is to get back into your body. The only way to get back into your body is to breathe. But when you breathe, you reawaken the feelings and sensations that frightened you out of your body as an infant or a 2-year-old child. So as a catch-22. So we have to have the skill or the coaching, the willingness to go through a temporary period of confusion,
Mm.
a temporary uncomfortable period, to get back to that original essence of creativity. So that's what's needed today in the world, is for us to discover these abilities and capacities that we have and to awaken them and to apply them. And so it starts with being conscious of your breath, and you don't even have to breathe in any special way. You just, what you have done is you've just redirected your energy from wherever it was going before into something that was bothering me, into my environment that's disturbing me, into a pain in my body, into a thought in my head. And so as soon as I focus on my breath, I am redirecting my energy. When I redirect my awareness, I redirect my energy. And when I redirect my energy, I go to a different place. I have a possibility of a new and a different experience. And so it's a trick in a way, but because by focusing on your breath for 5 or 10 or 20 minutes and just observing your breath, just feeling the inhale, noticing the exhale, listening to the internal sounds, sensing the subtle sensations in your nose, in your sinuses, in your throat, tracking the movements in your belly and your chest. You're not breathing in any special way. You're allowing the breath just come and go by itself, but you are coming more and more into connection to it and into the present moment. And so that skill, mindfulness training, meditative awareness, that's crucial for these times in the world. We have to unplug long enough and replug into some resources in us in order to cope and perform. So the next step after practicing breath awareness is to begin to play with your breath, to see, move it in different ways, practice different rhythms and patterns. And if you are still practicing mindfulness, you'll get some insights. You'll have some ahas. You will make some connections. And there are certain conscious breathing techniques that you can engage in that have been tried and tested and true and proven. And so if they're proven for everybody else, they'll work for you too. So you identify one of those breathing patterns and you start to experiment and play with it on a daily basis. And immediately and over every day and week that you practice, your life changes. It's just like that. So.
Yeah, and it's so true. Just listening to you, I was nodding like a puppy, because it's everything you said. Those touch points are so important, and it's very interesting because when I work with people, particularly men, they have trouble in just kind of sitting in that stillness, in that mindfulness. And often or not, the number one question I get is, I can't meditate. And when I ask the question, why? It says, well, I can't shut the mind off. And it's very interesting. And you explained it right there, exactly what to do. It's so simple. And what I've realized, and I'd love you to talk on this a little bit more, is I think life has become so complicated that we've forgotten how simple it is to live. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And the breath is like a quintessential example of something that's so basic, so simple, that we take it for granted, we overlook it, we underestimate it. And you hit on something really powerful about meditation. That's the most common reaction or response to many people who try to meditate. And that's where the power of the breath comes in. Because when you are breathing consciously, you are meditating, and all the benefits of meditation come from breath awareness and conscious breathing. And so we can't shut our mind off. Don't try. When you die, your mind will get shut off, and not till then, and maybe not even then. Well, let's wait and see. Right? But you can't shut the mind off. It's a thinking machine. It's an operation that continues constantly. So don't try to shut it off. Divert your attention to something dynamic like breathing that's moving and changing in each moment. And then the mind isn't bored. If you repeat the same breath over and over again, at first it's kind of useful, but then your mind will get bored with it. So if the breath is alive and you're tracking each breath, the mind is intrigued, it's curious, and it wants to follow the breath. And so it solves that problem of meditation. Breathing takes the boredom out of meditation,
Yeah.
It just does. And so we're looking for this combination of well, let's think of it in terms of men, because I'm a man, and the last year I've gone through just, one of the most challenging and difficult periods of my life. I carried from my early childhood and my military training and so on, I carried attitudes and behaviors that are really rude and crude, and maybe it used to be tolerated. Maybe 50 years ago it was acceptable. It was probably never acceptable, but it was tolerated somehow, or it was, cultural stuff, this male patriarchy thing, and ignoring power differences, especially in therapeutic sessions, which breath work isn't therapy, but it's very therapeutic. And with the rise of all the work in trauma, breath work was already at the center of all of that stuff as a tool and a force. And I was at the center in many ways of the modern breathwork movement, one of the leaders. And I had to clean up my act. I had a come to Jesus moment. I realized, oh my God, I was traumatized, and I have been traumatizing other people. I was hurt, and I was hurting other people. And it didn't happen so often that I bothered to do anything about it. And I was even kind of outspoken and cavalier. They're going, hey, somebody complained about your session. I said, well, great. One person out of 100 complains. What am I going to change my work? I'm going to change my life for that one person. The other 99 are completely happy. So get off my case. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on. And but then, hey, 2 people in 100 are complaining. That's still, God, if out of every 100 people, 2 people hate you and 98 love you, you must be doing something right. And so my arrogance, my ignorance, my insensitivity, my unconsciousness was catching up to me. And until it really just came down on me, or blew up, and just in my life, like I stepped on a landmine, and I blew myself up, and I blew up a bunch of people around me. And so as men, there's a lot we need to awaken to. There's a lot we need to let go of. There's a lot of internal changes we need to make, in attitudes and behavior and outlook and perspective and opinions and thoughts and ways of being. And I think this is part of the shift that's coming to men in one way. Look, I'm half male and I'm half female. My mother was a woman, my father was a man. And so I'm 50-50. Maybe I'm 51-49 because of the way I express in my, how I formed my body. But so men need to find that inner female aspect and bring it to light, because that's where the balance comes from, and so I love that you're doing men's work, and I'm actually considering beginning to do a lot more. But like anything else, I like to make sure that I own something, I've embodied something, and it's not just a thought, it's not just a philosophy, it's not just something I get a little taste of, and now I want to run off and pretend that I'm an expert at it, which is happening in the breathing world, by the way. But there's an element of breath work that addresses this, because breathing on one hand is a very feminine practice. It means you have to be open to the breath. You have to soften to the breath. You have to relax into the breath. You have to allow the breath. And that's half of the story. The other half is controlling the breath, doing the breathing, being in control, which, hey, personally, I've had enough practice at that. And I need to practice at some other stuff. So again, breath work shows up as the perfect tool to address the perfect issue.
Mm. And it's interesting you talked about there going through your own personal issues and things that you've had to look at. And I'd love for you to sort of touch on the things that you had to sort of look at, how you looked at it, accepted it, and were able to. What did you actually put into practice to help you to kind of overcome the issues and then become a better man, right? Because we are in this journey as a man, and as you said, we have that female essence too. And I truly believe I've done sort of some shamanic work. I've done the Buddhist part, and of course the breath work. And I've learned so much in that journey, the connection of male and female. And it's interesting that in my life, I grew up in Brazil. I was brought up by a lot of women, and one in particular who was my grandmother, who was a beautiful feminine energy to me, or for me, should I say. And one of the things that it taught me, and I actually didn't have a male influence, like a father, so to speak. And what I found, which was really interesting, growing up, I struggled with understanding what a man is, because society tells us that men have to be strong, men have to be tough, and you shouldn't show your emotions. There is no place for vulnerabilities. There's no place for weakness, and you have to work and grind, and all of these labels that have been given to us, which I've experienced this myself. It destroyed me because I can't keep up with the demands, and we're seeing it now, how much, that's also affecting other men. But it seems that there is a lot of confusion there with the now new term, toxic masculinity. And also, as one of the programs that I run, which is Alpha Wellness. Now, the word alpha, I was trying to choose a word very carefully because I wanted it to represent something that is powerful, but it wasn't, it didn't fall into that toxic masculinity. So I ran it past my wife, who's a woman I trust. And I said, look, I'm going to call it Alpha Wellness. But I said to her, I researched what alpha means. And when you go back to study, alpha means the beginning, to begin, and omega means the end. So Alpha Wellness, Alpha Male is the beginning of our journey. So I'd love for you to kind of speak on sort of your experiences. I know I kind of went off a little bit off the topic there, but just sort of addressing these issues that we're facing as men, and this confusion of, who should we be? What should we be? What do we follow? What don't we follow? And having gone through your own experience, what did you learn, and what brought you to kind of where you are now?
Well, I'm in process. I really I had a come to Jesus moment, as they say, and realized, okay, I need to start over. I need to forget everything. I need to show up in a completely different way, and then reorient myself on many levels. And so I think part of in my own process, and I don't know how much we each have our own personal history. And so certain things are really paramount. In my particular case, might have nothing to do with the man sitting next to me, but there must be some common threads. There are some underlying universal sort of issues, let's call them. And through my personal entry point, I might be able to touch on some of those larger issues that all men share, let's say. And one of them is that I realized really recently that my willingness, or my compulsion even, I feel compelled to love people. And the way I love men is different than the way I love women, based on my history, my programming, and my conditioning, and my own habits, and my own patterns, and all that kind of stuff. And that loving, nurturing part, when I express it, is coming from that mother in me, that divine feminine that makes up half of my existence on some level. And then so when I got into a field or a state of wanting to nurture, love a woman, this sexual energy kind of leaks out. Mm-hmm. If I'm unconscious, if I'm, and so that's a really important thing for me, to watch that, to be conscious of it, to set up some guardrails, and to be awake in the moment to redirect energy. I mean, so much social, cultural, and personally inherited baggage. And I thought I could just make my way, because nobody has to be perfect to assist in miracles during breathing sessions. And so I just kept blowing it off, going, hey, okay, well, I pissed off this woman, but hey, you want 10 names of other women who said I totally changed their life and it was the most amazing experience of their life and they're grateful forever? I can do that. But what's the point? The point is, if someone was genuinely harmed, I want to kill myself, because the opposite is what I'm about. And so, and that's the other point, that when we get into the male aspect, which, like anger, for example, I mean, I use anger because, boy, people are scared of it. And I learned something, actually, I met a woman, Bonnie Johnson, who many, many years ago, almost the day that I got out of the military, I met this woman. It was within a week, let's say, but it was like immediately, like a sign from heaven, I met this woman. And she had been in a jail cell with Chris Krimwinkle, who, I don't know if you, Charlie Manson, the famous Charlie Manson guy. She was one of his cult people who was involved in the murders. And she shared a jail cell with her. And I said, holy cow, like, what do you do when you're locked up in a cell with somebody that crazy? How do you shit, She goes, oh, I just show that I'm crazier than they are. And then they stay away from me. And I thought, that makes sense, because those times when I really went off on somebody, they backed off big time, And so, we don't realize we're kind of using these strategies, and we need to be conscious and sort of honed and refined, and because it is useful, because anger causes action, and anger is an energy that can be transformed into determination, for example, right? I mean, the world got so angry at Hitler, there's no chance that anybody like Hitler is ever going to reach that position of power again in the world without somebody stopping it before it gets to that point. So, and there are lots of examples of that. So, and that's part of what breathwork does. Breathwork is kind of an alchemical process. We're transforming energies, right? Sadness can be transformed into gratitude. Fear can be transformed into excitement. Anger can be transformed into determination, And so that's a big part of breathwork, is how do we use our breath to literally transform ourselves and energy.
No, brilliant. And how deep, I'd like to get your take on this. How far can you go with breath work? Because using the natural breath, and I do it in the car, I do it whilst I'm kind of listening to you, and I mean, how far can we go? I mean, if somebody's listening to this for the first time, and they're listening to you, and we're talking about the power of breath, and you touched on, to begin with, where it can be uncomfortable, fear kicks in, the ego kicks in. And I've had this myself, is like, I remembered my mind, the ego going into, what are you doing? What's going on? You need to stop. And I'm like, no, I'm trusting this process. We're going. Let's keep going. And the more I relaxed into it, and there was a deeper voice that said to me, I love you. Just let go. Let go. let go. And the more I did, and it's so beautiful that you touched on, when you kind of turn, a fear into gratitude, and, in sadness into a beautiful, sadness into gratitude. That happened to me so many times, and I've kind of gone so deep and gone so high. How far can you really go with breath work? I mean, I've been doing this for a few years. You've been doing this for 50. So I'd love to get your take.
No, I mean, you're a man after my own heart, because that's exactly my question. And that's exactly what's causing me to, it's caused me to go to 66, 67 countries. And it's motivating. What is possible? If this is possible, what else is possible? And, I've had miracle experiences in my breathwork practice. People literally, healing themselves of AIDS, of long-standing things. Miraculous things. And in my own life, mending my collarbone within a week, and mending a totally blown out knee that I should have been in a cast on crutches for weeks or months. And it took me a week to recover and to renew. So I don't have the luxury of not believing in miracles. And so I don't know where can we go? What is possible? And so I'm on that path. That's what I'm looking for. And I'm trying to leave some breadcrumbs along the way, because you don't know you've gone too far until you've gone too far.
Yeah, that's true.
I've been trying to be careful to make as much progress as I can, but to temper my own passion so that I don't go too far and then I can't come back and share what I found,
Yeah.
So that's what it's about. And I love it, because that's the driving question. What else is possible? And it started actually when I used to teach firewalking. I taught firewalking for 20 years. And sometimes for 4 or 5 months in a row, I do a firewalk every week, sometimes for 3-4 months in a row, every single week, another firewalk. And so I've done 1,000 firewalks, more. And then one day I realized, wow, I have gotten everything I need to get from this path, from this practice. And it just sort of ended. And I didn't choose it. I had signs, hey, this is starting to feel like a job. I feel obligated to walk first so that I can set an example. And I was doing it just for the money. And my heart wasn't really in it anymore. And so I was getting signs, but at some point it was just boom. I lost all interest, all desire, all motivation to teach, and it just fell away. And so nothing like that just come up with breath work, just the opposite. It's almost like the first time I did a firewalk, and the way I felt and the possibility, and I had that thought, oh my God, if fire doesn't burn, and it should burn, but it didn't. What? And so if fire doesn't burn, what else is possible? Maybe germs don't cause illnesses. Maybe, and I started to question every limited belief and program that I had. And that supercharged my personal breathwork practice, because now I had a real orientation that was compelling and irresistible and unstoppable. And that's as alive in me right now as it ever was. And so I can't be anywhere near the end of my learning yet, because I would have gotten some sign by now. Just the opposite. You just re-stimulated this freaking question that's driving me, like, what else is possible? How far can we go with this? What can we do with this? So I'm all in to find out, and I'm doing my best to find out.
Man, I'm with you, because it's something for me that's what breathwork sparked for me. I'm very open about it. I came into recovery, 12-step, because I had years of addiction, abuse, and various forms of addiction. And I fell into meeting a Buddhist monk who lived around the corner from my house, and I wanted to do some therapy. And he ended up teaching me about Buddhism and breathing. All of a sudden, then I fell into, I don't believe the word falling. I found the path of breath work. And I then started to go through that path. And I think, like you, it awakened something in me, not only just from a conscious perspective, but also the ability to go within and discover, it's almost rediscover what I had forgotten. Because I truly believe and understand that when we come into the planet, we have the veil of forgetfulness. And I've learned through my time that we're here to rediscover love. Because I think, and I can only put this into words because I've experienced it once, but words doesn't describe what the creator is. And the only thing I can describe it is unconditional love. And through this time and using the breath, I never come out of a session feeling like, oh my God, I never want to do this again. It really does build something in us. I connect with something every single time. And I think, like you, with the people that you work with, probably say the same, that it really does. There is something in us, in just something so simple when using and playing with the breath, that sparks this fire, this energy, this consciousness, in us, that connects us with everyone and everything. How far have you gone? I know kind of not far enough, because thank God you're still here to tell a story. But, for you, what's sort of been like the greatest experience for you so far?
That identifying the unconditional love as the essence of existence, that there's this intelligent space, call it, that is conscious and intelligent and is pure energy. And my meeting with Babaji Harikan Baba, who's written about in Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, he's this immortal yogi, Christ of India, levitates and can be in two bodies at once and can dematerialize things that just the mind, you can't wrap your mind. That just sounds like that's totally impossible. What are you talking about? My encounter with him was that highest, deepest kind of awakening that I've ever had, and it continues. And every time I have any kind of an awakening or a deepening, it has the same flavor, the same texture. And so I recognize it's the same force working that happened to manifest through this being in India, but it didn't come from him. It wasn't any more a him than it is me. And it's the same energy that's in the rocks and in the stars, and it surrounds me and it fills me. And can I identify with this energy? Can I begin to literally recognize it as my own essence that's non-local, and try to keep one foot in each world? I am a unique individual, and I am also totally, I am a universal being, expressing in a unique way. And this unique way of expression has me so captivated. I am so contained within it, or guided by it, that it's easy to forget the other more real truth, that I am one. I am you. I am that I am. The mystics and the saints and religious leaders have tried to point to this experience in many ways, but unconditional love is a pretty good clue to what we're talking about. It's a pretty good way to understand, and so if we can just start expressing more of that, we will be expressing more of who we really are. We will be awakening to who we really are more and more. But it's challenging. It's hard to maintain unconditional love towards myself when I look at some of the shit that I've done, ignorance or arrogance or unconsciousness. It's not easy. But if I can't do it with myself, how can I do it with anyone else? But then I also realize, hey, if I can't do it with someone else, how can I do it to myself? So what does it matter whether I express it towards someone else? And sometimes complete strangers. It's much, much easier to express unconditional love to somebody you don't have to live with, you don't have to listen to every day, who doesn't know your history, who knows who you really are,
Yeah.
So, working. And so start there. Send unconditional love to, somebody who just opened the door for you when you walked into the supermarket. Hey, that person, by opening the door, they just expressed love to me and they don't even know me. That's an expression of love. There's proof of who we really are. Yeah. I'm driving down the street and I'm lost. I pull up to the sidewalk and I ask somebody, hey, how do I get to 5th Avenue and 59th Street? Oh, go down here, take a left. And they didn't have to do that. That was unconditional love that was given to me. And I think when we start to wake up to all the times that happens in our life, it changes something in us. We begin to really realize something. And it's not just a pretty spiritual thought. Oh, we're all connected. We're all one. No, it's a fact and reality. And we need to learn to live according to that fact and not just as a pretty philosophy,
Yeah. And I think that's what it is. This is something that has been, made out as a fairy tale. These are just fairy tale lights. These things don't really mean anything, especially now. I've seen where, mentioning the word God or Christ, people are now being taken off TV and social media for saying these things. And I'm like, why is that? That's very interesting, because it was never, everybody would thank, our Lord Jesus Christ, or thank God that I'm here. But what I am discovering every single day is it doesn't matter if you take it out. You can take it out of everything. It lives inside us. It lives inside you. And it's one of these things that it will shine through. And you mentioned it there, Dan, with the smallest act of kindness and gratitude and thanks. And one of the places that I have found it to be so powerful was in forgiveness. I had to do so much forgiving because of my action, because of the things that I've done. But you know what? First and foremost, and I'd love to touch on this with you at some point. I did plant medicine. I went into, the sort of the shamanic journey. So we work with, with psilocybin, and, I've done work with Bufo, and I've done work with ayahuasca. And during the ayahuasca, the uni, the medicine showed me it was showing me constantly to love myself. And I found that so difficult. And there were so many beautiful things that were being shown to me that I found it so difficult. But one of the things I took out of that through the weekend that, I was working with this tribe was that word forgiveness. And first and foremost, the medicine showed me to forgive myself. And when I truly learned afterwards, because thank goodness with the work that my wife and I do, her being a psychotherapist, me doing the coaching, we're big in the integration work, because it's very easy to go in, have a wonderful, weekend over at Dan's and do a load of breath work. And then you go back to life and everything that you've done means nothing. So that integration work I found is really special, but also that word forgiveness. And I truly think with everything that's been happening around the world at the moment, with constant division, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's what you do or don't do, the team you support, don't support, the person you like or dislike, I've realized more and more, and this is why I asked the question about how far can you go with breathwork, because one of the things that it's done for me, it's completely lifted the veil, and it allowed me to see things for what they truly are. but also have that forgiveness around it, you know, and really be able to say, you know what, it's okay. It will all be okay. You know, it doesn't matter, because when you learn to sort of forgive yourself, and I'd love for you to touch on the forgiveness part, because I try to share this with people and say to them, when you can learn to forgive yourself, you learn to forgive others.
Mhm.
And when you learn to do that, you see the true beauty in who we are. And when you see the beauty in who you are as an individual, you see no different in anybody else.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of maturity versus good and bad. I like to think in terms of immature versus mature expressions, right?
Mm,
And violence is basically an immature expression of something actually beautiful.
mm,
One of my teachers said, a violent person is actually trying to beat the other person into something they can love. And boom,
yeah.
that just knocked me over. And the Babaji told me one time there is no saint without a past and no sinner without a future.
Mm,
And so forgiveness is the key to that, because if you don't forgive, you're dragging this dead past into everything you do, and it pollutes it and it blocks it and it sucks the energy out of life. And so letting go, forgiveness is about letting go. And here we are with the breath again, because if you cannot let go of your exhale, for example,
mm,
then you're not going to be able to let go of pain. You're not going to be able to let go of tension. You're not going to be able to let go of thoughts going around your head. You're not going to be able to let go of the past. You haven't learned how to let go. That's an energetic ability to let go, and let go physically, let go emotionally, let go psychologically, let go energetically. And so through breath work, we learn how to forgive in a very practical way by learning how to let go.
mm,
and and the root word, respiration, inspiration, expiration, there it is right under our nose, the word spirit. It's the essence, it's the root, it's the center of this practice is spirit.
mm,
There's no way that you can breathe without connecting to your spirit. It's just because there's no difference between your breath and your spirit. Your breath is the physical manifestation of spirit on earth. And
mm,
we're all sucking off the same bubble of air on this planet. And the air that's in me now, some of that air was in you
mm,
at some point, and some of it will be in you at some point. And
mm,
some of the molecules of air that are literally in my body were in Jesus's body, in the Buddha's body, were in Aristotle's body. That's just a fact. That's a physics fact,
mm,
that's this. We're all sucking off the same bubble of air, and it's connecting us at the deepest possible level. So you can't go into genuine breath work with open-heartedness, open-mindedness, without tapping into that truth and without actually beginning to touch it and live from it. So um, everything is, it's just too simple, it's too obvious, and the male mind likes to complicate everything.
mm.
And the male mind is like a Rottweiler just chewing on a bone. And try to take that bone away from me, he'll bite your freaking hand off. Don't take my problems away. They mean something about me. Don't try to change my mind. I know what's real. Like, oh God, the softening caused by the breath, the letting go of the breath, the inviting of new energy with each breath, it heals us, it changes us, it wakes us up, it
Mm,
liberates us. And if it doesn't do it in 1 or 10 or 20 sessions, then it'll do it in 200 or 300 sessions. Just
mm,
stay with it, because there's no going back. And ultimately,
mm,
we are connecting to our spirit, and that's, you can't do that for very long before something dawns on you.
mm,
And so I'm all in for that moment when things dawn on us, and maybe
mm,
starting with the male part of this world, like,
mm,
because we've been in charge long enough, and maybe it's time to let women take over some of the things that have been dominated by men forever. Hey, what do we got to lose? We're not
mm,
getting anywhere the way we're going.
Mm.
better to just let go completely. The odds are that any random approach will be better than the one you got. So let's learn to let go.
Yeah, yeah. That's very interesting because I often sometimes I joke. I know that our creator doesn't have a sex, but one of the things I heard being said, and I've said it myself, is I think if God was to be any sex, he'd be female. You know, it gives us life. And the female is the one that gives us life. You know, she births us into this, into this experience. And you're right. I think, there's got to be I think a real shift in our consciousness and in the way that we think, because the old isn't working anymore. And I think the more and more men allow themselves to connect with that female essence, will realize how important and valuable that essence really is, not just from a place of what it does to us internally, but also how important the female beings in our lives are. Because that in itself at the moment seems to be, they're trying to destroy that, and that's Mother Earth. And obviously, when we're looking at everything that is beautiful, that it grows, has an essence of, that female essence. And I say, I've got 2 daughters, I've got a beautiful wife, and, and I have a lot of women in my life. And one of the things I always aim to do is, and I've learned through this practice, is to protect and value our women, because actually they are, for me, they have been the most important essence in making me actually into a man, because without them, we don't exist. Without us, they don't exist. So there's got to be this, I believe that the divide has to stop, and we've got to reconnect in the full unity of stripping everything that we think we know and allowing ourselves to rebuild. I'd love to get your stance on plant medicine. Right. What's been your experience, and what are your thoughts with on medicine, plant medicine?
Yeah, let me get to that, but let me unload a couple of things that you brought up. One is Leonard Orr, who was one of my first really, and maybe the most influential breathing teacher I've ever had. He said that, in fact, his original letter to me inviting me to come and train and become a rebirther, he said that consciousness and breath are the king and the queen of the spiritual kingdom. And I thought, well, it sounds really beautiful, philosophical. Yeah, I really got it. But oh my God, that's exactly. Consciousness is this male aspect, and breath is the female aspect. And when you breathe consciously, you marry consciousness to breath, and you give birth to yourself, to life. And so, and it's kind of interesting and sad and maybe understandable in many ways that if you look at the women who have come to power, they came to power because they acted like men in many ways. They used male they use male patterns in a way and they lost some of their femininity along the way. They gave up some of that, and the women maintain perfect, a full divine feminine. You don't see them in leadership roles. They're like an undercurrent that's preserving and protecting and keeping everything alive. They don't rise to a peak like a male kind of dominant hierarchy thing. They're the foundation. They're the ocean that we're all swimming in. And so, I think that's really, and in breath work, to me, it just proves it, that yes, the consciousness part is the male aspect and the breath part is the female aspect. And how do I let these things intermingle and mix and merge? And that's the creative process. So we take part in it. And so plant medicines, I've had more than my share, and not only I've had a lot of synthesized plant medicines also,
Okay.
synthetic plant. I've probably done more LSD than Timothy Leary. I know I've done more than Ram Dass because I actually talked to him about it. and uh, and I tried everything. And I see how those things can be can open the door, can give
Mhm.
us a taste, but then we need to find out how to organically accomplish the same movements or arrive at the same states. They weren't meant to be depended on. They were meant to be just temporarily used
Mhm.
to awaken in us a certain capacity.
Mhm.
But I am connected to the earth, and so there's always going to be an influence. I mean,
Mhm.
trees have roots. And
Mhm.
so if you were to ask a tree to identify itself, built into the tree's identity would be the earth itself.
Mhm.
We don't have roots. And so we need a way to awaken our connection to the earth, and plant medicines can do that.
Mhm.
Um, and so can breathing exercises where you plant feet on the earth barefoot and you suck energy up from the earth through yourself,
Mhm.
through your body, and you move energy back and forth between you and the earth, laying on the earth and just giving yourself to it, and doing meditations where you just merge with it. I mean, these things came during hallucinogenic LSD, opium, peyote kind of states, but they were pointing to something. And all
Mhm.
I need to do now is lay down on the earth and just begin to imagine how I'm connected. And sure enough, that experience wakes up in me, and it's not a head thing. It's a felt experience. And if I generate some energy and I start playing, I can feel this energy between me and the earth. It's a real
Mhm.
thing. It's not a head thing. And so we need to awaken our connection to the earth, because this is where everything is happening.
Mhm.
I'm not a believer in dying and going to heaven. I'm a believer in trying to let's create heaven on earth.
Mhm.
And what a trap, what a trick to say, oh, this place is, well, I'm only here for a short time. I'm really interested in something else. Well, then go to that other place and let's why not really connect to the earth? Because I think I have a right to my physical body as long as the earth exists. And
Mhm.
my physical body is an expression of the planet. My blood streams are like the rivers, and
Mhm.
of the world. And the same elements, earth, air, water, and fire, make up the planet and make up my body. And there's a lot of philosophy around this, but again, I think the value of plant medicines is they give people an experience. And so it's not just intellectual, it's not just philosophical, it's not theoretical. They're forced to have a felt experience, and that's the source of creativity, and
Mhm.
that causes us to grow, and it helps us to heal. So
Mhm.
plant medicines, I'm all in. I wouldn't preach for it. I wouldn't preach against it,
Mhm.
because I just done so much of it myself.
Mhm.
Um, but I would preach for it more than I'd
Mhm.
preach against it. You
Yeah.
know,
No,
yeah,
no, no. I'm with you. I'm with you for sure. I'd like to ask a couple more questions if I may. With regards to chronic pain, how can breath work help?
yeah. Chronic pain is chronic tension. Before something grows into a pain, it begins as a subtle tension.
Mm.
We need to get better at relaxation. We need to learn that it's not just a matter of being relaxed or not relaxed. There are levels of relaxation. There are dimensions of relaxation. How quickly can you relax? How totally can you relax, right? Um, how deeply can you relax? In the face of what situations can you relax? In the middle of what circumstances can you relax? So relaxation is the key. We need to learn how to relax. When we relax, something softens. And if something softens, it can open. And if something opens, it can move. It can be penetrated. It can express. It can flow. And so everything starts with awareness. And then the very next thing, maybe equal or the next most important thing, is relaxation. So chronic pain, just like what's the other, sleep apnea.
Mm-hmm.
No one, zero people who've been tested for sleep apnea don't experience breath holding during the day. And so if you're holding your breath during the day, of course you're going to hold your breath at night. It's a pattern. You're training every day, and the subconscious picks it up as a thing to do. And so when you're fast asleep, all of your contractions and the tensions like are breath holding, right? Mm. I'm putting a key in the door and I'm holding my breath for a moment. I'm trying to remember something and I'm holding my breath for a moment. I get up from a chair and I hold my breath for a moment. I back up my car and I hold my breath for a moment. 1,000 times a day, I'm holding my breath. And so, of course, at night, that's going to carry over. And the same thing with chronic pain. Now, chronic pain means chronic tension. So work on, you can't do anything about the pain that's too big to handle. So relax your jaw, relax your neck, relax your tongue, relax your throat, relax your shoulders, relax your spine, little muscles, relax around your eyes, relax muscle groups, relax joints. Get into a relaxation practice and chronic pain will disappear. And if it doesn't disappear, it will bring you to the contributing cause. Maybe thoughts in my head, I don't deserve pleasure. And if I have pleasure, I'm going to pay for it in a horrible pain. So better for me to live in pain because at least it's familiar. Ecstasy is totally frightening because it's totally out of my experience. And I would rather stick with something that's familiar, even though it's painful, than take a risk of something that could be much worse, but is probably much better. So we're trapped by our own thoughts, and painful thoughts create painful emotions and painful feelings. Painful emotions create painful thoughts and painful physical sensations. We gotta put a wedge. We gotta crack into that cycle of thoughts, emotions, and feelings and sensations. And we got to just get in there and interrupt the cycle, because physical pain is connected to some negative emotion. Physical pain is connected to some negative thought. And maybe that pain's not going to release until that thought comes out into the light and you change it. And I've seen that so many times. People with chronic back pain, with, constant headaches, just gone, just disappeared because they breathed, because they did some other inner work. They stopped suppressing an emotion, and that emotion that they thought, God, if I ever express this, nobody will love me. I'll probably kill somebody, or if I let myself feel how sad I am, I'll be eternally sad. I'll drop into this endless pit. And they got all these reasons for not allowing themselves to feel. But the first time they have this big cathartic emotional release, the physical body is relieved of pain. It's a no-brainer, literally. So I think, each person has their own little threads they need to unravel. If they're dealing with chronic pain, there's probably some universal aspects, but there's probably some very personal subjective aspects. And so we need to consider those as we play with this thing called chronic pain.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Thank you. And just with regards to how to start and where to start, as I talked about, I really dislike using the word trend, but it's become a trend. And when things become a trend, unfortunately, they can be bastardized. And I hope that the breath is something that doesn't go that route. But So before it becomes something that's so confusing, because everyone creates their own form of breath work, although it's such a beautiful and simple practice, how can people start, Dan? And what practice can people use just simply if they just want to start to play, they want to feel safe and they want to start to get some benefits. And then eventually if they want to go off and research for something, what can they do?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of really very powerful breathing practices, powerful in the sense that they've been acknowledged by science and medicine, and they're evidence-based and tested and proven. So that's safe, right? People say, oh, okay, it's not just some woo-woo guy telling me that I blah, blah, blah. But hey, this thousands of double-blind studies and so on have taken place. So I think I can trust this. That gives me kind of permission to try it. For example, paced breathing. Anywhere, I call it a therapeutic zone between 4 and 8 breaths a minute is what I would call a therapeutic zone in breath work. Well, 6 breaths a minute is smack dab in the middle of the therapeutic zone. 5 or 6 breaths right in there, that's a very juicy spot. That means I'm breathing, say, 5 or 6 breaths a minute, right? So a 10-second breathing cycle, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. That's a 10-second breathing cycle. I'm breathing, 6 breaths a minute. That's exactly in the middle of a therapeutic zone. And I can expect my cortisol levels are going to be affected, my blood pressure, my tension levels, my heart rate variability, unarguable, measurable, significant physiological benefits. But that's one level of the benefits. What about the emotional benefits, the psychological benefits, the creative benefits, the spiritual benefits? So I think the best place to start is with a sigh of relief. An exaggerated sigh of relief, because nobody needs to teach it to you. Everybody knows what it is. You take an inhale that's twice as big as usual, twice as big as your normal breath. You do it on purpose. You take in a breath. You take in a little bit more. Create that little extra stretch, and then let go. And exaggerate the letting go. Think of pleasure. Think of relaxation. Allow yourself to soften. Use some pleasurable, soothing sound. Or no sound. Just let the breath go and relax. And do it again. Pull in an inhale twice as big as usual. Create that little extra stretch, a little extra expansion. Then let it go. Don't let it out slowly. Don't let it out carefully. Don't control it. Just snap it loose. Dump it out. And you let go. It's a moment of complete letting go. And you do it again and again and again. And if you do this just a few breaths in a row, you're going to start to feel. The first thing you might feel is that, I'm starting to get dizzy. I better stop. No, dizziness is a good sign. It means energy is moving. It means your chemistry is being affected. Your nervous system is reacting. If you're getting dizzy, lean back in your chair or lay down and keep going. Now you don't have to worry about falling. And dizziness is a fun feeling. When we were kids, we loved it.
Yeah.
Me up, spin me around, get me on a roller coaster. I love dizziness. Why should we be afraid of a feeling? The feeling cannot hurt us. How do you interpret the feeling? There it is. I'm going to die. That's an interpretation. God is healing me. I think that's a better interpretation, but the feeling is still the feeling, and it means nothing by itself. And so start with sighing, just deliberate sighs of relief that force you to take a bigger breath than normal, create an extra expansion. And there are stretch receptors that are organically pleasurable. It feels good to take a deep breath. But if you take too many deep breaths in a row, all your subconscious fears and those feelings that frighten you out of your body when you were a little baby, they're going to start to come up. And so you're going to find a sophisticated reason to stop. You're really afraid. And uncomfortable feelings are starting to come up, but you're going to be rational and logical. Oh no, this isn't good for me. My pH is out of balance. Blah blah blah, and you're going to find an excuse to stop. Just so be honest. You're afraid, okay, and it's okay to be afraid because fear is the bow of the ship when you're cutting into a new waterway. You know, fear should be the first thing that we feel. If you're not feeling any fear, you're not growing. Because fear is the first thing we feel whenever we grow, is fear. When you learned how to walk, standing on stage and talking for the first time, of course you're afraid. You should be afraid. That's the energy. That anxiety is fuel that we can use. So I forgot the question, but maybe that answered it.
It did. One which actually I loved you talk about it in your book, and when I did one of your courses, you talked about it as well, yawning, the power of yawning. And actually, I wanted to sort of bring that in because when I listened to you, I could not stop yawning, but it was brilliant because I got a really good session in.
That's my second. That would be an advanced technique, right?
Yeah.
So sigh of relief, good place to start. The next thing would be make yourself yawn. Just activate a yawning reflex, trigger the yawn, wiggle your jaw while you breathe in,
so good.
invite the yawn, and do it on purpose. Because the yawn is triggered by a different part of our brain than the part we use to balance our checkbook, right? So yawning activates this part of our brain, and it's very primal, and it comes with a lot of very important stuff. So make yourself yawn and do it again until your eyes water. And if you can choose to yawn and make your eyes water, think about what you just did. You're a biohacker. You just hacked into your system and you produced lymph fluids, you produce tears, so we're biohacking with a simple yawn. And it's fun to exaggerate a yawn. I say yawning is yoga. We have a stretch. We want to make noise. So then the ultra advanced technique would be to combine a sigh of relief with a yawn. So the next time you want to give yourself a sigh of relief, activate the yawning reflex, and then give yourself sighs of relief while the yawn is happening. And the next time you yawn, don't freeze. Move your breath. Give yourself a sigh of relief while the yawn is happening. So that's a great place to start. Start with natural responses in the body. They're natural breathing responses. They're not exercises or techniques. They're natural body responses. When do I take a sigh of relief? Without thinking about it. I take a sigh of relief when I'm in pain and the pain goes away. And what happens? Right? A sigh of relief happens when I'm afraid and the fear passes. Phew, right? So if every time our body goes from a state of pain to no pain or fear to no fear, this sigh of relief expresses itself, why not reverse engineer, learn from nature, and choose to sigh on purpose and see if it doesn't move us from pain and fear into pleasure and freedom. It will do it. And if it doesn't do it with one sigh of relief, it'll do it with two. If not two, 10. If not 10, 20. If not 20, if you sigh for an hour without stopping, you must be the most advanced yogi I've ever met, because that continuous sighing is going to put you in touch with your thoughts, with your feelings, with your emotions, with your fear, with your anxiety, and you'll have an opportunity to clear and work through that stuff. So it's the same place we start with. That's the place we keep coming back to. I am a big believer in drilling on the basics. And a sigh of relief is the most basic breathing exercise or technique that you can do. And so do it and exaggerate it and do it fast, do it slow, do it in different times, in different places, experiment with it. If you're a little tired, you've been sitting on the computer for a while, or you're in that low period crash after lunch, a couple of hours, try deliberate sighs of relief for 4 or 5 minutes and see if it doesn't completely change your state. If it doesn't, I think you're a freaking liar. I think you didn't really do it. Or I'd have to actually watch you do it, because I can't believe that you could do that for 5 minutes and not change your state. It's impossible.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I have a question that came up for me as I was listening to you and just sort of watching the different way in which you breathe. One of the things that I see sometimes I see online is when people talk about breathing through the nose and breathing through the mouth. And people talk about the benefits of always breathing through the nose. And then they talk about, the actually it's not beneficial for us to breathe through the mouth. But I understand through breath work, that's different than you kind of breathing every day. Can you touch on that? Because I know that for somebody, for example, who doesn't understand breath work and maybe gets taught in one way, or maybe he's reading something else. Again, there is so much information out there that is starting to sort of create confusion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the nose is meant to breathe through. It should be our unconscious, constant day and night breathing pattern, breathing through the nose. I mean, it has hairs that filter dust. It has microscopic cilia that trap microscopic particles. It warms, it moisturizes the air, it conditions it, it spirals the air. We generate nitric oxide when we breathe through our nose. We stimulate aspects of our brain that don't get stimulated when we breathe through our mouth. I mean, no argument whatsoever. Nasal breathing should be your everyday, constant, all-around automatic breathing pattern. It's how nature intended us to breathe. That's why you can't swallow and breathe at the same time, because there's a little flap that goes over the passage to the lung when you swallow. Otherwise, when you swallow, shit would go into your lungs. So and if you pinch the nose of a newborn baby, they don't know how to breathe through their mouth. The only time they breathe through their mouth is when they're at the end of their rope, when they are stressed, and then they breathe through their mouth. So we need to learn how to breathe through our mouth without triggering the fight or flight mechanism. We need to learn how to breathe through our mouth without our throat getting dry. And so breathing through the mouth is an exercise. It's a technique. It's not something you're meant to do all the time. It's something that you do for a specific purpose at a specific time for a specific reason, because there's no other way to get through. I can't laugh through my nose. I can't cry through my nose. And so if I can't breathe through my mouth, I can't be a human being, for God's sakes, So we need to get comfortable with the whole spectrum. And in the transformational end of the spectrum is mouth breathing. Rapid, powerful, cathartic, transformational experiences rarely, if ever, come from slow, nasal, diaphragmatic breathing. So we could say the same thing about the mouth and the nose. Hey, diaphragmatic breathing should be your automatic, unconscious, constant breathing pattern. Nasal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, that sums up, I think, all the typical vanilla ice cream breathing practices you'll hear about, because they are truisms. They're classic kind of realizations. Yes, diaphragmatic breathing. But diaphragmatic breathing is very grounding. You'll never trigger transformation with slow diaphragmatic breathing. Just the opposite. If you go through a transformational experience using upper chest mouth breathing and you have a tremendous breakthrough, now you can use nasal breathing and diaphragmatic breathing to anchor and ground yourself on that new level that you have just gotten to through mouth breathing, cathartic, high chest kind of practices.
Mm.
So some people need to start in one place and go in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
Other people need to start in a different place and go. So each person needs to approach breath work starting from where they're at. And a good breathing coach can do that. I can come to you and I can meet you where you're at with your breathing. I mirror your breath. I observe your breath. I sense your breath. I listen to your breath. I watch for details, and I'm gathering all this information, and it's mixed with everything I've always learned up till now, and it's mixed with my own intuitive abilities, and now I can coach you. And I might coach you in a very different way than I coach the next person, because I'm accounting for where you are and what direction you need to move in compared to where somebody else is and what they need to focus on. However, there are universal fundamentals. How conscious are you of your breath? Can you actually observe your breath? How good are you at interoception, sensing your breath? How good are you at relaxing? And how willing are you to feel a lot of energy, to generate a lot of energy? And at some point, we need to crack all those codes, and we just start from whatever is the low-hanging fruit. Hey, this person's a mouth breather. Guess what? We're going to practice nose breathing. This person's breathing high in the chest all the time without realizing it. Guess what? We're going to practice diaphragmatic breathing. Oh, this person's done a lot of yoga breathing, and they get uncomfortable when they breathe in their chest because they practice diaphragmatic breathing so much. It feels unnatural. It feels unhealthy. It's uncomfortable. Well, guess what I'm going to make them do? I'm going to make them breathe in their chest until they feel just as good that way as they do with diaphragmatic breathing. So, breath work is an intuitive, creative kind of a practice. And some of it needs to be based on evidence-based, science-backed. But hell, if we wait till science catches up to prove stuff, we're not going to get anywhere. You need the rebels. You need those people who go off the trail and discover something new and come back and tell the tribe about it. We can't be following the rules and sticking with science. Otherwise, we're not going to grow. We're not going to discover. We're not going to create. So you need a balance. Yeah. And so find that balance and explore the whole range of the breathwork spectrum. The very subtle nose buteyko, Patrick McEwen, oxygen advantage, subtle breathing, and get to the other side. Wim Hof, holotropic rebirthing, Yahoo. And if you're not comfortable with one or the other, what does that tell you about yourself? What does that tell you about your fears and your limitations and your programming? So I don't think there's any way to experiment and explore breath work without learning something about yourself and about life.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. And what about children? Should children practice breath work? And if so, when do we start teaching children? And the reason I asked that, I was talking to my wife and we were kind of feeding the two little ones. I have a 25 and an 18-year-old, and then I have a 4 and an 18-month-old.
Wait a minute, you have a 25-year-old child?
I have, yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I had him, I was 17, almost 18 when he was born. So yeah, he's
children, we need to give them a head start.
Yeah.
Kids have to deal with freaking school shootings. Jesus, Christmas. I mean, the crap that kids are having to deal with in the world today compared to even when I grew up, people were talking about, wow, compared to when I grew. So that's an unending saga. So kids need to learn how to self-regulate their emotions. They need to deal with bullying. They need to deal with fatigue. They need to deal with distractions. They need to deal with anxiety. And so the sooner they discover they can do that with the breath, the better off the world will be. And how soon can you begin? Well, a newborn baby, if you put a newborn baby in somebody's arms who is afraid and in panic and in pain, that baby is going to feel that energy and they're going to be distressed by it. And if you put that baby in the arms of somebody who is peaceful and loving and calm and in a state of joy, that baby is going to pick up that energy too. They're going to feel that. So that's where it starts. It starts with you holding a baby and putting yourself into a beautiful state. The problem is that we use the baby to generate our positive state. Right? We're in a positive state because we're holding them. We're not bringing anything to them. We're actually sucking off their infinite field of joy. We're feeding off it, as we're meant to do. As we're meant to do, because children are our teachers, and they have infinite energy, and they do give us energy, and it's a beautiful, pure energy that we can use. But on the other hand, it's like I've been on lots of airplanes. I travel so much, and there'll always be a situation where some baby is screaming and crying on the plane, and you can feel people on the plane getting upset and getting uncomfortable, and they want to go over and tell that mother, shut that kid up and blah, blah, blah. Or they'll do everything they can to shut the baby up, not because they care about the baby, but because they're uncomfortable and they cannot be comfortable again until the kid shuts up. So now the kid is responsible for my problems, which I am generating. And we're putting that shit onto our kids. And so we need to do our own inner work. If everybody on that plane would, in that moment, come into a peaceful, comfortable place in themselves, that baby would stop crying in a heartbeat. So we need to take responsibility that our kids are expressing and reflecting what we are unconsciously or subconsciously unaware of. They'll act it out in our face. And they don't even know they're doing it because they're just naturally, they're tuned in, and they're not doing it on purpose, but they will act out our unconscious fears and our unconscious patterns. So children are our teachers, and we need to make sure that they get a good start so that they don't lose all the good stuff they came into the world with. Most people, by the time, they become an adult, which means they've been adulterated. They used to be pure, and now they've been adulterated. We got to kind of save them from that adulteration process and allow them to maintain their purity and to build on the abilities that are born into them and nurture them. And so freedom and safety. Give a child freedom, keep them safe. I don't know what else we can do. Anything else might help, but it might interfere. So, and there's the International Breathwork Foundation has a committee I helped form that I worked on for 5 years called The Breathing Classroom. There's a Facebook group. There's a website by that name. They have a beautiful manual. They've got all these breathing techniques that if you're a school teacher or you work with kids, cute little, cool little ninja breath, bunny breath, bicycle pump breath. I mean, all kind of cool things, and kids love it. And it's very useful. And it's free. Anybody can just go online, find that course. It's a 3-hour training, read through the the manual, and start playing with kids with breath for soothing breath, energizing breath, calm down breath, wake up breath. I'm going to do art breath. And kids love the basic principles like combining sound and breathing. Kids love to do that, love to make noise. Combining movement and breath. That's a basic breathwork principle. Combining movement with breath. Kids love to do that, right? Visualization. Kids' imaginations are wild. Combine imagination with breath. And kids are so willing. And we need to be more like kids if we are going to benefit from breathwork ourselves.
Yes. Very true. Very true. I love that because and the reason I asked, because we always try to teach the kids about breathing. And my daughter in particular, she's 4, we taught her when she gets frustrated to just take a breath, just take a big breath in, and relax. And every now and then when she sees me or my wife getting agitated by something, she goes, "Mommy, Daddy, take a breath." Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll fight back and hit us with it. That's
yeah, man.
But once they get to the teenage thing, it's like, hey, don't tell me how to breathe. Don't tell me what to do. I got up to here already. So we got to be. Some people are really good at, and some people much better than I am at working with kids, at working with teenagers. You got to make it a game. You got to make them. You got to make them think they are the ones who are choosing to do it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I introduced it. And I introduced it accidentally. I got a grant. I was working for the Council on Alcohol. I was actually president of the Youth Education Committee on the Council of Alcohol. This was back in mid 70s. And we developed a program, and we went around to every sixth grade in the city of New Bedford. And then it grew into a national program. I did the pilot study, and these were 11-year-olds, because we tried high school, but they had already been drunk lots of times. They thought they know everything. They weren't about to listen to some guy coming in and telling them not to drink. That was, so we kept going younger. And then we got down to the fifth grade, fourth grade. It was a little too soon. And so we found the sweet spot. 11-year-olds. They had already, most of them had had a sip of wine or a beer at Christmas or a party. And so they knew something of the effect. And they were very conscious, very aware, pretty savvy, but they didn't think they know it all yet. So we decided that was the group. And so I had to talk about alcohol, because that's where the grant came from. And I wasn't supposed to introduce my breathing stuff, but it became inevitable because the kids pulled it out of me. So it started with brainstorming. I said, okay, why do you think people drink? And so, because they're bored, because they're tired, because they're in pain, because they're lonely, because whatever. And they knew it. They knew. These 11-year-old kids nailed it. They knew every reason, because my friends do it, to socialize, because it's a blah, blah. They got it all. And then I said, okay, so you can't drink legally. So what do you do to relax? What do you do to have fun? What do you do when your friends want to go? What do you do when you're in pain? And they got it. I play my video games. I ride my bicycle. I play basketball. I talk to my friends. I take a nap. They had all the answers. And so after everybody, and they got such juice out of seeing their idea written on the board. Everybody wanted to contribute something. And so I was doing my best to just write everything they said. And they felt so acknowledged. They felt so, and then one kid, it was the first kid said, hey, we told you everything that we do. You don't drink. So what do you do? I said, well, let me tell you. And they all wanted to breathe. Every single one of them wanted to try to breathe. And I didn't have to tell them about it, convince them. And the most beautiful thing came from, it wasn't the first class. I think it was like the third class that I went to. We had 55 first grade classes in my city, and I went to every one. I made the rounds to every one of them. And I think it was the third class. Yeah, it was definitely the third class. And I was trying to use an analogy about alcohol, that it's not good or bad. Because if you ask, hey, is alcohol good or bad? Everybody says bad, because they know that's what you want them to think and everything, right? So I said, whoa, wait a minute. What about this pencil? Is this pencil good or bad? And they're going, oh, wait. Okay, so if I stick it in your eye, well, it's probably bad. And then the kid who just happened to be in front of me at the desk, I said, what's your name? He said, Tommy. I said, give me a piece of paper. I wrote down, I love you, Tommy. So what I do with the pencil is what makes it good or bad. The lesson was same thing with alcohol, but you know what? Before I could leave that class, every single kid wanted me to write, I love you, Mary. I love you, Brett. I love you. they wouldn't let me leave until they got a personal note. Oh God.
Uh,
So, I learn a lot from kids, and I'm still learning from them. And I don't have to tell you, you
mm.
must be learning from them too.
Oh God, yeah, always, and which is the reason why I wanted to ask you that question, because again, another thing, that we're seeing more and more and more, that we're now having to protect our children, from things that are out there, and and having to, to really, which is not something that previously I always wanted my children to sort of understand things about the world, but not to just fully expose them to things that they're not ready for, or things that will confuse them, or and actually ruin children. And we're seeing that, and which is why I wanted to sort of ask you, because I understand the sort of the power of breath work, and and also just a little play, as you said, the play with the breath and teaching them little things. And even my daughter coming to me and saying, "Daddy, you need to take a breath." These things are subconsciously teaching children habits that are not just awakening them to what's natural, but also as well, what I found, it's their knowledge and their freedom to create and to play and imagine is amazing. Like my daughter's, how she sort of plays and the things that she comes up with. My wife and I, sometimes we sit down and go, "Do you think she remembers past lives?" Because she talks about things as though like it's really real. And some stories that I've sort of just heard her tell before have been absolutely incredible. And sometimes I do wonder whether it's because of, putting these practices into place, and is she picking up things and being more, because children are still at that stage where they haven't been ruined yet. So, they're so much more open, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's it. That big word, habit. Because that's it. We are driven by habits, and we're not conscious of the habits. And so once something becomes a habit, that's when it's really powerful. So the habit of breathing every day when you get up, the habit of turning to your breath when you notice you've gotten upset, remembering to just take a breath when you get activated. When that becomes a habit, it starts happening by itself. You don't even have to think about it. It's built in. And that's when the magic really works. When I don't have to remember to remind myself to breathe, when my tension gets up to a certain level, and it used to be, okay, I'm getting tense, I should take a couple of breaths. I don't even think about it anymore, because if my tension level gets up to a certain point, my breath is activated by itself. It responds by itself, because I formed the habit, and it's working for me even when I don't think about it. Or if my bliss gets dented and I start to feel, man, I'm really getting depressed, I need to breathe, I don't even have to think about that anymore. If my energy level gets low, it's like the breath just comes in by itself and lifts me up. That's training. That's habit. So the forming of habits, if you can replace an old habit, just to form a new habit is really difficult, but to hook it to an existing habit and start to gradually replace an existing habit that's already in place, that's a shortcut, right? So I noticed that every time X happens, I react Y, then that becomes a real resource for me. Okay, the next time X happens, I'm going to remember to take a breath. Ooh, X is happening, I'm going to take a breath. Pretty soon, that's hardwired, and certain things just stop happening. So
yeah, it's so true. Dan, how can people work with you? How can they connect with you?
Thank you. Yeah, breathmastery.com, and at Dan Brulé Official is my Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Not hard to find me. If you Google around, you can find me. Breathmastery.com is good, because there you can subscribe to my monthly newsletter. I have written an article or published a report about breathing every month since June of 1976. So the archives on my Breath Mastery website go back literally 50 years.
Wow.
years. Yeah. I haven't missed a single month. And so if you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll get each new article or report that I publish or write. And you can dig into years and years of articles and reports and essays and transcripts of seminars and flyers from handouts from my trainings and so on. So breathmastery.com is the best place to start, and subscribe to my newsletter so you can keep up to the current stuff.
Amazing. And you mentioned about you have a program that you're currently working on at the moment, a 6-month program.
Yeah,
talk to me a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I've had a practitioner program. I've been training breathwork facilitators, breathing teachers since 1976. Well, I was at the University of Hawaii, and I was obligated to produce these reports and publish these things, and I just never stopped. And so in the last couple of years, I realized, I need to create a new practitioner training, and so I sat down many times, starting to create lessons and modules and units and stuff. And it went on for the past 3 years, pretty much, almost. And I didn't get anywhere. My pile just got bigger. And then I decided, just fuck it. I'm just going to start a new course, and I'm going to create it as we go. And so that's what I've done. We started February 7th. I'm using every week. We meet on Tuesday, 2:00 New York time. And I introduce a new technique, a new exercise, a new lesson. I tell a new story. We practice something. And so that's an ongoing thing. And I'm going through my list of modules and units that I thought I would create, but I'm creating them fresh and alive. And I'm using the feedback from the Q&A to make it really productive and useful. So it's a really exciting thing. I'm enjoying the weeks. We probably have about 105 people, I think, doing the 6-month course. And anybody can jump in. Everything's been recorded, so you can jump in. It's like a merry-go-round. It's already going, but you come up, you can jump on, you can catch up to all the old lessons because we've got them recorded. And in August 1st, I think, is our last scheduled class. That will wrap up the 6 months. And at that point, we're going to organize it into a product, and it'll be it's called my legacy training, Breath Mastery Legacy Training. And so people can take part in the creation of it right now. If they join, I can use their questions and their experience of the practices to tweak my teaching and to create new lessons. So I'm inviting anybody who's interested in breath work to go ahead and join this 6-month training. It's not, you can join for the last week. In 6 months, you'll still be able to join if you want, Yeah. And so that's exciting. And that's one of the main things on my website. If somebody goes to breathmastery.com, you'll see the online breath mastery training to enroll for that. And if somebody wants a discount, they can mention that they heard about me on your podcast, and we'll give them a pretty serious discount.
Amazing stuff. Amazing. Dan,
right.
Thank you so much. So grateful to have spent this time with you, and thank you so much for your knowledge, everything that you do. And it was so great and fantastic to have met you. And hopefully we'll get to do it again.
Good. Thank you. This is the first time. I seem like I've known you for a long time. So
yeah, no, it's been brilliant. I'm really looking forward to us doing it again for sure. So listen, guys, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening, for taking part. I hope that you've enjoyed today and you've enjoyed Dan. Please connect with him and definitely look at his book, Just Breathe. It's absolutely fantastic. Go to Breath Mastery and have a look at everything that he does. He is a beacon of knowledge when it comes down to breath work, and I'm sure you will not be disappointed. Have an amazing day, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you again very soon. Take care.